Cavell is running late. Gingell.
Here.
Kuhn.
Here.
Gershenson. Here. Woodward.
Here.
Lubes.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Please join me in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item is approval of the minutes from May 3rd, 2022. I have a motion by Commissioner McGilvery, support from Commissioner Gingell. Any comments on the minutes? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Our next item is approving the agenda. I have the agenda on the iPad and printed minutes. I don't see any other corrections. So, yes, Commissioner
Just
Gingell?
had one question. I know Commissioner Nelson had been working on a grant and another item around the Marine Patrol that looked like it was gonna be added to the agenda, as I understood. I don't see it on here. Maybe mine's an old agenda.
So are we gonna be discussing that, or is now the time?
Talk about, I think there's a little bit more work that needs to be done before we actually move the grant forward.
Okay, so we're not gonna vote on it today?
Not gonna vote on it.
Correct. So just as a little update, I know that during our last public health and safety meeting, there were some really great discussions in regards to taking a look at kind of having some more conversations in regards to criteria, right? So one of the bigger issues that came to light was taking a look at the acreage, right? So the initial resolution that came before us during our previous public health and safety was 1,000. Really happy to say I had some really great conversations with Commissioner Gingell. What we did is we ended up taking a look at reducing it down to 500 acres and still considering making sure that there was attached to the criteria for this specific resolution the public access points. The reason really why it was taken off the agenda today is because there still is some difficulties with getting patrols on Cass Lake. And just as a little history, one of the reasons during our last budget last year to really take a look at appropriating this $150,000 towards our Marine Patrol was to really take a look at to hopefully entice the multi-jurisdiction and communities around Cass Lake. Cass Lake is our largest lake here in Oakland County. It is a multi-jurisdiction lake with 4 different CVTs, and one of the other variables which can make this a little bit more trickier is the fact that the public boat access point for Cass Lake is in a state park. So at this point, in conversations that has really nothing to do with the criteria that we both, agreed upon, it's now taking a look at how we still get patrols on Cass Lake. And unfortunately at this time, there still is some questions in regards to some of the surrounding CVTs and lake associations on Cass Lake. So I'm hopeful. It's not dead, it's not going, the money is still there. It's really taking a look at how we ensure safety on all of our public access lakes first and foremost, and then obviously honor those private lakes patrols as well. I am happy to say that this does not interfere at all with any of the Marine Patrol agreements that'll be moved into tonight's board meeting. Unfortunately, it's just there's still pieces that we don't have. And to move forward with it seems silly given that there's still significant missing pieces at this time. So as I said, it's within hope that we are able to figure out that problem and barrier on how we can ensure more safety on Cass Lake. But as I said, rest assured, it does not interfere at this time with any of the agreements. And I do want to extend a gracious thank you to Commissioner Gingell for having the conversation. Unfortunately, like I said, it's not ready.
Okay.
So.
But soon.
Commissioner Gingell?
Yeah, so I totally appreciate it, understand, thank you. Want to be involved in the conversations, happy to keep working together. I just had gotten a note from staff saying that it was gonna be, coming here, and it was for all county municipalities that we already had a agreement with. So I didn't know there was more others, but totally understand it. And in, around the acreage thing, even 500, I think that gets pretty, like Lake Orion, I'm not sure is 500, and it's a
Lake
pretty,
Orion qualified.
pretty big lake, so, but I just want to make sure I have a chance to review it, so I'm happy to work together.
Sure. And just as a clarification, if I may, Madam Chair, based upon the criteria of the 500 acres and taking a look at the public access points, the lakes that would be eligible would be Cass Lake, Lakeville in Addison, Cedar Island in White Lake, Macy Day in Waterford, Orchard Lake, White Lake, Highland, Orion, Walled Lake, and Sylvan Lake. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That item and another item have been like a
To
ping
another
pong ball
day,
match.
to another day,
Yes.
to another day.
yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so the present day agenda, some of you may need to refresh your agenda on the iPad, but I'm looking for, do I have a motion for the agenda? Motion by Commissioner Nelson, support from Commissioner Gingell. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, our agenda is approved. Our first public comment relates to items on the agenda. Is there anybody from the public wishing to comment at this time? Thank you. All right. Our first public comment is closed. I see no communications, and we move into our regular agenda. There are 2 items on our regular agenda, followed by the consent agenda. The first is from the Sheriff's Office, a resolution creating the specialized countywide active assailant incident training 2-year program. I have a motion by Commissioner Jackson, support from Commissioner Gershenson. And we have our Under Sheriff Childs and Guy up here to speak to it.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Yes, we're here trying to get 3 positions to do our training for any active shooter training for schools or houses of worship. And we would be asking you to approve these positions. They are sunset, I believe, after a year and a half, or whatever it is. And we're looking forward to moving forward with this. And we would reach out to, we've had a lot of contact with a lot of different schools. We'll make sure we reach out to any schools that have not yet contacted us.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions regarding this item? Commissioner Gershenson?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I have not had a chance to review this, but will you be coming to us and saying we've got 10 schools or we've got 6 schools, or are you just relying on the sunset?
No, I believe we are required to bring a report back after 6 months, if I'm not
Okay,
mistaken.
that's in here?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Jackson?
Thank you, Chair. As a commissioner who represents a district that lives in the city, City of Southfield, that contains like several mega churches. I'm talking about 10,000 member plus congregations, or one about to take over the Old Star Theater potentially. Do you have a plan, or will you work with the city jurisdiction and the officers that, represent, because the sheriff does not police
Correct.
Southfield.
Right.
So what's your way of going about kind of tackling this? Because there is a potential for a problem with these big facilities.
Yeah, before we go into any area, we would definitely reach out to the police chief of Southfield, and if they wanted to help us out, absolutely. But we have run quite a few classes with quite a few people. What we normally do is break it up into groups that we can handle. I think, if I remember right, we had 18 officers at an event training quite a few people, so we would break it up. We couldn't do them all at once, but we would contact the police chiefs for sure before we went into that area. And if they want to participate with us, we do a lot of training with them already. Absolutely, to be able to help.
And then as well, these facilities also have security forces themselves. So there's going to take some coordination really to make this impactful where I am. So is there a way we could maybe get a proposal, a plan ahead of time, maybe to present to some of our city leaders or congregation officials?
Yep, there should be a document that has a high-level overview of the different types of trainings we have. It doesn't have a specific agenda. What we've done so far is work with each area, depending on how long they have the ability to train for. If they have 8 hours, then we can set an agenda that's for 8 hours. If they only have 4, then we set an agenda for 4 and try and pack in as much as we can. But we can provide that.
Okay, all right, I'd like to kind of work with you guys, at that time. And then the third question I had was, the 3 officers that you're gaining, they're 2 gonna be directed toward addressing issues in the schools and houses of worship, but then another officer to work with internet crime. Do I have that correct?
That's a
That's our
different.
next item.
That's a different,
Yes.
yeah, okay, well, I'll say my comments later.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening.
Good evening.
Within the resolution, I believe it's within like the second whereas, it talks about how the Oakland County Sheriff's has received numerous requests from public schools, public school academies, houses of worship, and private businesses in regards to training programs to address, obviously, the ongoing threats. With that being said, as I read through this, I first and foremost am in support of it. As a previous public school teacher, I actually was a part of the ALICE training here about almost a decade ago now. So I do understand the importance specifically of that training as I went through it myself. The question that I have though is, how much vetting has been done within our public academies here across Oakland County to demonstrate the interest in wanting the training? So I know that you say numerous requests, but as I'm like looking up, I know we have 28 local school districts, and I believe there's about 20 different public school academies. So almost about 50 we're looking at just with the public schools and public school academies. How much outreach has been done within these districts and within the academies across Oakland County?
I don't know if I can answer specifically for the academies. I know there's actually Chairman Woodward and others, Captain Hill, who's not here today, has had conversations with Oakland schools. So there's been quite a bit of conversation. I think we supplied what we've done so far in addition to what is planned to be done, that for areas that have reached out. I don't know if that got uploaded or not, but that has been given.
So there's definitely been commitments
Yes,
of school districts
Yes.
with wanting these trainings?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so we forwarded several documents this week that show the number of schools, where they're at, and the number of already trained, and then the ones that are scheduled to be trained. So I don't
Right.
know if Barbara might have those handy.
Barbara? The school districts that have been trained or requested training, have they been uploaded?
No.
Can we do that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that. And then secondly, my last question is, again, I see value in this first and foremost. My question though is, has there been any conversations in regards to other means of proactive things that school districts or public academies, libraries could do in regards to looking at environmental modification and environmental infrastructure? Again, I don't want to say that training is not important, because it is. But I also would like to know, has there been any conversations in regards to taking a look at the infrastructure component of schools? I know that there's, in light, unfortunately, of threats and school shootings across our country, that there now are products that can be used as far as different kinds of doors, and those kinds of means. Has there been any conversations about taking a look at any infrastructure modifications to ensure safety and secure buildings and classrooms?
I'd like to answer yes. I haven't been involved in those. I believe our school resource officers at the schools where we are would have had those conversations. Some of those would be up to the schools themselves. And I know at some points there's been some resistance to some of the methods due to fire code restrictions. There's a lot of discussion when it comes to internal security things to be done inside a school where, we might like it, but the fire department may not, especially when it comes to door locks. But I wouldn't have any specifics, but I'd have to talk to our school resource officers at our current locations where we have contracts.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And I think when schools pass their bonds, then we have that conversation with them too. Obviously, if they're looking at building modifications, then we would provide that information at the
Sure.
time.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, anything else? Commissioner Woodward? Or Commissioner Cavell?
No, that's.
Commissioner Marsh?
Well, I was-
Gershenson?
I was just gonna say that a few years ago, when Commissioner Dwyer and I worked together on school safety issues and gun safety issues, we did bring in speakers that presented a lot of different infrastructure options, and the result was that individual school districts made those choices depending on their budget. So it wasn't something we were involved in, but we did do an educational piece about it.
Anybody else? Commissioner Cavell?
Sorry for being late, and my computer can't log in, so forgive me if this was already discussed or it's an obvious answer. But from reading this earlier today, there's a, can you speak to the 1-year review of this?
A 6-month review.
6-month report.
Right, 6-month reports, but that this will come up for renewal in 1 year.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
I might be better.
I was gonna say, that's
I might
not
be
our
better.
criteria.
I might be better to talk about this. So, I mean, also, I mean, working with Commissioner Spiz, so, the whole purpose of this, and I think there's everyone who recognizes that there's an importance to add capacity to help support training. And I mean, I don't have the list in front of me, but I mean, previous lists, a lot of the trainings that have been happening overlap largely with a lot of where we have existing contracts, which would make sense. I mean, we've got our deputies there, and the synergy of what that creates. This, allows for expanded capacity, and I guess my hope is make sure that every school district is afforded all the same support, access to the same training. In an ideal world, that we get a uniform standard with assurance that training is happening in all the school districts. That requires the willing participation of those school districts, and that's going to take some time. So the way that this is structured, with reporting 6 months, outreach to individual school districts, we're appropriating the salaries for these 3 additional officers that will be playing this role for that increased capacity. An opportunity to review, is this working? Is this getting to all the places that is absolutely necessary? And an opportunity to renew, with the goal of this being kind of like a 2-year focus. I mean, that these positions ultimately are not set for 2 years, unless, of course, we determine that this is an essential function that we need to find a way to fund and structurally fund it in the normal appropriation process. So that's why it's the first year is funded, appropriating those dollars with a automatic trigger as we come towards the end of that, after the first report that comes back, deliberation, is it getting to how is this working? Are we getting the participation in at least the opportunity? I don't think that there is a expectation that everyone, my hope would be that everyone will take advantage of it, but we want to make certain that this training opportunity is available to every school district, particularly those that are, all of them, I guess.
Okay. Thank you. And then I had one more question about the training. Two out of the 3 positions are going into the training unit, right?
Actually, all 3 would be,
in this
yes.
resolution.
So then, from when I've hung out with y'all, that means you're going to make the training unit 50% bigger, right? Because there's 6 trainers currently, and 2 of those are admin, Captain Hill and Lieutenant Workman. And then you have 4 other people that do the work. I know they do work, but are on the ground training deputies and stuff.
Yeah, we have 3 deputies in there now, full-time, yes.
So you have a department with 1,400 deputies, and 3 of them work on training.
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure that's recognized by everyone.
All right, anything else?
And just,
Commissioner Woodward?
just added to that is that, certainly things come up and training needs need to be addressed. And I do have confidence that, the department will figure out what those training priorities are. But I guess from a verbal stance, I want to hear that the priority is to make certain that every school district that says we need this training gets this training.
That is the priority.
That
Every
is the
school
priority,
district
okay.
in the county that either has reached out to us already or that we will reach out to that has not already talked to us.
Right.
That is the priority.
Right, and I hope, and from a goal, it would be wonderful that that this becomes like a standard, and we get to all 28. That's what I want to hear.
Yes.
Don't need to have it written.
No, that is, we would love to have that happen too, to make it easy.
right.
Formal training,
Right.
one way to do it.
Formal, yeah, I mean, from the same trainer, so they
Yep.
know that the training's being, delivered
Done
in the
the
same
same
way.
way.
And you shouldn't hesitate to reach out to all the commissioners. I mean, if there's no response, I'll speak for myself, that I will be happy. I have myself and a number of staff have also reached out to a number of superintendents, and I think at this juncture, there's people like, yes, we should do all this, and then there's some that says, well, we do it this way and everything, and I think, it probably has some value to pull them together to say, how can we do this and schedule it with all the other stuff that they have to do. And this is, important, and so I'm glad to hear you say that, and trust it'll get done, and call on us to help make connections if we're having a hard time getting a return phone call.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And I would like everybody to know, if you refresh your iPad, the 3 attachments are now under this item. Commissioner Jackson?
Real quickly, businesses, where are they in the loop as far as training? Because I just wanted to say again, the city of Southfield, we had a shooting, I want to say last week, and a lot of our bars or social clubs, at least all of them, have had parking lot shooting. And just guns, period. And we know there's a big debate about guns and gun control. Our county is vast and broad, different, Southfield is an inner ring suburb. We have more shooters than hunters. How are we going to really address businesses and active shooter situations?
Well, we want businesses to be safe in the county. This would be initially geared, or not initially, this would be geared toward all schools. We would have to come up with a mechanism for reimbursement for any training of any private businesses, but they wouldn't be excluded. They would be a part of it, but they would be a little further down the priority list.
And currently, do we train businesses?
I want to say we may have done 1 or 2, but I'd have to look back at the list or get in touch with Captain Hill.
So there's an evolution of this training basically going on, reacting to Oxford.
Yes. You're welcome.
All right, another lively discussion. It is time to prompt the vote.
Cabell?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
You have 10 yeas, or actually, want to double check. 10 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the next item on our regular agenda is staffing modification, creating a Deputy 2 position assigned to Computer Crimes Unit. I have a motion by Commissioner Gingell, support from Commissioner Powell. Anything you'd like to add to this item? Again, we'll use Commissioner Jackson's word that this is evolving, and as our technology gathers more progress, we are desperately in need of more people for this position.
Yes. And I would just add, you basically said it right there, and due to the Oxford incident, our computer crimes is even more backlogged. I know there was an email, and I can't remember, I know we're months behind, like 2 months behind, I think, in cell phones, and 6 months or 7 months behind in computers and analysis, so this position's greatly needed.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Woodward?
I would point out, like, this position is being created in a budget neutral capacity, because I actually do believe that based on everything that Undersheriff said, and I think just the nature of some of the crimes that are happening today, that this component for investigating is critical, and we certainly saw it on an exponential level, in the wake of the Oxford thing, that doubling the capacity, because right now there's 1 person in the position, and this would, I guess, there's like 100% increase in capacity, but it's still only 2 humans. I think is absolutely necessary.
Thank you. Anything else? Prompt the vote, please.
Cabell?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
You have 10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, We move on to our consent agenda now. There are 13 items on the consent agenda, all related to interagreements with Marine Patrol Services for the Charter Township of Bloomfield, Commerce, Orion, Keego Harbor, Waterford, West Bloomfield, Highland, Township of Independence, Addison Township, Sylvan Lake, Orchard Lake Village, and White Lake. I have a motion by Commissioner McGilvery, support from Commissioner Ginjal. Are there any comments on the consent agenda? Chair Woodward?
So, I mean, this gets, I mean, I know that the undersheriff and folks at the Marine Division have been part of conversation. So with these contracts in place, and these are 3-year contracts that, I mean, I guess either party can adjust if necessary, but I know that there's been capacity issues. If a Cass Lake that doesn't have the full, I mean, I guess technically with this, a little bit of, a little bit of, they're starting very small, small on a very big lake, but without that, do we have, if Cass Lake and the communities, particularly, I mean, the West Bloomfield and Waterford and Orchard Lake in those areas, say, come together, we find a way to come together to get hours on it, I just say 1,000 hours of additional service, do we have the capacity to figure it out?
Yes.
We have the,
Yes.
that's the right answer I was hoping for. Okay. Because, I mean, and I just, the reason I'm bringing this up, that we've got the way that we fund this, and I think Commissioner Ginjal reminded us at the last meeting that due to budget cuts, there was a contraction, and yet to keep the service going, a mechanism to raise money, but it's not, I mean, it's like money that gets raised through private funds that goes into the city that is the actual contracting agency. And so from a public safety perspective, I think it absolutely makes certain that we work towards a way to make sure that we've got the coverage on particularly the big lakes where there's the large number of people and all those types of things. And then, and those lakes that have public access or of significant size. And if we get to a point in which there's capacity challenges, I think that then there needs to be a conversation about, okay, where do we, if we've got limited capacity, where do we put that? And it seems to be where there's the most people and where there's, I mean, where they can, I mean, be the most helpful versus maybe a smaller private lake. If we have the capacity to do it, we should do it. But I mean, hearing you say, if there is a will from the local communities and the same type of structure that all these others have come together to find a way to add additional hours, we'll figure out a way to add additional hours.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that works.
Anything else? Prompt the vote, please.
Cavell?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
McGilvray?
Yes.
Oh, there it is. 10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. Thank you. Our consent agenda is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we move on to our second and last public comment. Is there anybody from the public wishing to comment? Yep, well, come to the front of the table and give us your name and community you're from. And everyone has 3 minutes to speak.
Sandra Price from Oakland County. Want to make sure it's set properly before I speak. 2 quick things. I know that you guys want to increase staff for training for with the police, and your concern was churches, and 2 of those officers would be placed at churches. And is that not what I heard?
No, I'm sorry. I went.
Okay, that's all right. So my question is at what data do we have to show that Oakland County has had church shootings, or in Michigan for that matter, to warrant churches being one of our top to go after for funding money for police officers? I get that there's stuff going on with the schools, and I'm not even hearing a solution because the schools have to take some blame in those shootings. They're not doing their job as teachers because they knew that student was an issue. But that's not part of this discussion. So I'm wondering if we're not pre-planning for the shootings of the school, for the churches that are going forward, because that's an issue for me. I don't see any data where there's been shooting at churches. Okay, second thing is all these agreements for the lakes, again, what data do we have to show that all these crimes are occurring on our lakes? I'm not aware of any. So I'm not aware of any deaths, I'm not aware of any people going out and shooting at people on the lakes or, so I guess my question is why are we focusing on these things? I understand the schools, but our lakes, what is it that's going on in our lakes to prompt this kind of money effort being spent? And our churches, again, where's the data? Do we have any?
I can speak to you later about lakes.
Well, we're on the record, so I'd like to,
I'll speak to you later.
okay, fine. So those are my concerns.
Thank you.
Does anybody have an
Public
answer
comment is your
for?
opportunity to give information to us. We do not respond
Oh,
or answer
gotcha, okay.
questions during public comment.
Gotcha, okay, well, those are my concerns. And again, when it comes to the schools, schools need to take a bigger role and responsibility for their students and knowing that their students are having issues. This isn't technically a gun thing. It's people doing the right thing, including parents. Because guns don't kill, people do. Just like pencils don't misspell words, people do. So I have a hard time with always going after the cart when there's a horse in front pulling it, is my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Hello, my name is Catherine Kennedy, and I'm from Lake Orion. And I don't recognize the last speaker, but she perhaps doesn't realize that the communities are funding the services for the lakes that they choose to fund. So the overall county is not paying the sheriffs to patrol the lakes, but the communities that raise their own money to pay for that are supporting that. So I actually have seen where the deputies were needed for a drowning on Lake Orion. I've lived there long enough. So I appreciate that we do have that service, and I hope that when Woodward was so persistent that the sheriff agreed to figure out a way to add additional hours, it isn't simply at their expense. Too often I've seen 15% cuts at the discretion of the chairman for sheriff budget. I don't understand that, especially given the fact sheriff property tax line item. That's a concrete number. How is it that anybody in this board has the authority to remove anything from a concrete number that's already been assessed against our property taxes at a specific rate? That's what I would like to have explained to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? All right, public comment is closed. There is no other business before us, so this meeting is adjourned at 5:12 p.m. Thank you, everybody.